Joining us in the studio today is Commissioner in Battle Creek City Commission, Dean Newsome. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here today. We appreciate the time. You know, it's interesting because we invited all of the commissioners and the candidates, and with the exception of 3, everyone said yes. And as it relates to you, I've had 2 listener emails to me about you. One of them said, thank him for his military service. And so that seems like an appropriate time to remind folks, or tell them if they haven't heard, what your background is.
Well, great. Well, first of all, I really appreciate the email. I do have 21 years of active duty Air Force time. In fact, Battle Creek was my last duty assignment. And when I came here, loved the city, decided to stay, and committed to helping the city grow. I moved into the north side when I first moved here in '98. Continue to live here on the north side. But by background, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have a bachelor's degree in sociology from Duquesne University, a master's degree in public administration from Troy State University in Alabama. I'm a Lean Six Sigma certified black belt for those of you in the manufacturing industry. But I like to have fun, too. I'm a qualified snowboard instructor. I'm a licensed skydiver, and I'm a certified scuba diver. And all of those last 3 things came after the age of 50. So 55 is the new 30.
I'm glad to hear it. Very glad to hear it. So you said the city inspired you to stay. What was it about the city that did that? And since then has inspired you to serve?
Okay, great. This is a great place. How many cities of this size have a lake in the middle of the city? The architecture on the north side alone is fascinating. We have, just on the north side, we've got a college, we've got elementary schools, we've got a hospital, we've got an art center. This city is in the middle of everything, geographically as well as culturally. So that's what caused me to stay. What caused me to serve? It actually goes back to when I first came here in '98. My kids went to W.K. Kellogg High School and Battle Creek Public Schools. So serving really is in my DNA. I was on their PTSA. In fact, I was a president. I served on the board of Habitat for Humanity and got involved in a number of builds. I got involved with Big Brothers and Sisters. I've been a Big Brother for years and years, ever since I was in college, all the way through here recently when my big kind of transitioned away out of the program. So serving, it's the thing to do.
How long have you been doing this now as a commissioner?
Well, I was elected in 2013. And, you know, in June, July of 2013, the city was kind of in an interesting state along with the commission. In fact, the Inquirer, I remember reading, called the city commission as a whole dysfunctional. In the last 2 years, you haven't seen that. You haven't seen that in the Inquirer. You haven't seen that talk. The city commission, by and large, has been a fairly cohesive team focused on getting things done.
Is there anything in particular in the last year that you think exemplifies that?
Oh, absolutely. For the first time in who knows how long, the city commission, working with the city manager, created a mission and a vision with specific goals and timelines for moving the city forward. And just some of those goals: fostering economic vitality, residents and visitors feeling safe, citizens having access to more recreational, cultural, and leisure opportunities, a reliable infrastructure, and well-planned growth and development. So that alone. And by the way, we hired the city manager, Rebecca Flores, who is a municipal government rock star, you know, and she has a set of performance evaluation goals that hold her and the city staff accountable for achieving these things that we'd set out. So great mission, great vision, great strategy. Equally important is greater communication and outreach. A lot of complaint in the run-up to the 2013 election was that the city government just didn't listen. So the commission, we made it a priority to hear citizens' voices to express their desires, their ambitions, their needs, and their expectations of city government. Do you know, Richard, we have had over 51 venues for residents and businesses to give their input on everything from what they'd like to see in a city manager to the city's goals to what they'd like to see in the new police department. Chief Blocker has been out and holding conversations with the neighborhood churches, even those things the city can do to help lower barriers to employment. So the city commission has not only been listening but responding. And when we have public comment, it used to be people would make a public comment, it was thank you for your comment, we'd move on, and the meeting was adjourned. You look at the city commission meetings now, since 2013, very responsive. Folks air a concern, It's not a dialogue per se because we want to have everyone air their concern.
Right.
But at the end of this public comment, the city commission and the city staff responds to those comments that citizens have. Almost unheard of. The crime rate is actually down. Look at the police reports and look at the uniform crime reports that the FBI reports. Crime in the city of Battle Creek is down from 2013. And within Ward 3, success has been based on listening to residents and businesses and working with the city to ease their concerns. You had folks complaining about the burned out buildings on Northeast Capitol Avenue. Those buildings are demolished, and there's a nice grass pad there. You had Liz Kendrick, my friend who lives up in Post Edition, complaining about the high traffic. She lives a block from a park, and she's concerned about cars speeding through there. So I worked with the police department to get some traffic enforcement things up there to slow that traffic down. Here, folks who work first and third shift, especially out in the fort, have had difficulty getting to work because of the way the bus schedule runs. And I sit on the Battle Creek Transit, the Transportation Committee. Now, running buses is a very, very expensive proposition. So I looked to see what else can be done as an alternative. So working with Jonah and a couple of the churches, I co-founded and co-funded a project called BC Rise, which was a pilot organization using church vans to give folks a ride during the off-shift hours when the buses don't run. So, you know, the successes we've had in the city over the last 2 years, both at the city as a whole as well as the ward, make it worthwhile to continue serving.
So what is a priority then going forward, would you say?
Excellent question. And the priorities going forward are those things that are actually in the city manager's evaluation plan. First and foremost, a bottom-up review of the code and inspection process. You know, it's critical to take care of that because the goal is to ensure that buildings and repairs are done safely and promote the upkeep of property without being overly bureaucratic. And if we can do that, we can increase property values, which pumps more money into our school systems like Fremont and Verona and post-Franklin schools, and you have people who want to live where they work. So that's a priority. Downtown development is critical. We hired a new assistant city manager for downtown development, but we went a step further. If you ever go up into Hastings, I don't know if you've ever been up there, downtown Hastings on State Street is bustling every single day, even Saturday. Downtown Battle Creek, not so much so. So what did we do? We hired John Hart to work on downtown development exclusively, and John Hart is the man who made Hastings downtown area what it is today. So we've got some good projects going there. Priority-based budgeting is critical because we want to stay within our budget. The folks I work for, we call it program-based budgeting, but it's the same concept.
Right.
You figure out the programs that are critical to your given customers, in this case a community, and then you develop the budget from there. And then, you know, these things are in the city manager's 15-16 election cycle or performance cycle. So it doesn't matter who's elected to the city commission. The cast is set to make sure that we achieve these goals going into the future.
So I mentioned there were two emails. One was to thank you for your service. The other one was from a constituent who had the perception that you've been absent some of the time. And whether or not that's true, I didn't analyze any numbers. The perception was there. How would you respond to that?
There's an old saying that perception is reality.
Yeah,
I absolutely don't buy into that perception. So let's talk about the numbers because I have gotten into the numbers. I missed 9, again, this is not my numbers, this is through a FOIA request with the Inquirer. I missed 9 city commission and workshop meetings, not 9 city commission meetings, city commission and workshop meetings. So let's put that in context. Other commissioners have missed as many as 11, but let's put that in greater context. Over the course of the last 23 months, there have been about 73, maybe a hair more, city commission meetings, workshops, work sessions, committee meetings. I serve on 5 committees. I chair 2. So look at the ratio. I missed 9 meetings of over 73. Perception is not reality.
Got it. What do you think about BC Vision in about the minute we have left or so? We've heard folks say this is like nothing Battle Creek has seen in terms of collaboration and information gathering and then action. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I'll tell you, I sat down with John Bryant, the CEO of Kellogg Company, probably about 4 or 5 months before BC Vision became what it is today. And we talked about the things that the city needs. We need to develop jobs. Okay, that's important. But more importantly, we've got to make sure that the people who live here can actually take those jobs. My parent organization has infused dozens of jobs in the city over the last 2 years. However, we find that we have to end up hiring people from outside the area because we don't have the talent inside the area for people to qualify for those jobs. And then, of course, if people are going to work here, we want them to live here. And so it's important, excuse me, that we invest in our educational system, get into the schools, and invest in our culture area. So you have that third piece, the culture of vitality. I'm incredibly excited about BC Vision, and I am so proud that I was asked to be a part of the BC Vision Steering Committee overseeing the larger effort.
All right, Dean Newsome, incumbent commissioner. You'll see his name on the ballot tomorrow. Thank you for the time today.
Thank you so much, Richard.
So Commissioner Newsome, from whom we heard, has a challenger in his ward. She is candidate Kate Flores, and she joins us this morning. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Thank you for the time. Tell us what's motivating you and what your background is.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Union City, which is just south of Battle Creek. Had ties to here for a very long time. Mostly I've worked in the nonprofit sector here in Battle Creek for over the last decade. Very committed to our local community, very committed to all of the residents in our area having opportunities, feeling their voices are heard. Most recently, I was the founding director of a nonprofit called Voces, which means voices, or voices in Spanish. And it works with the Hispanic community. And I started there, pretty much from scratch. My first task was even finding a place. I was working out of the trunk of my car.
Oh, wow.
And in 7 years, we grew the organization to become a really thriving nonprofit that's serving hundreds of families locally, and, has a $500,000 budget now. So I'm motivated. Mostly my heart period is with people, and I think I bring a leadership style to our community that's really people focused. And I simply want to see the best. I've done program work on the ground with people. I've worked with our grassroots leaders. I've worked with people at all different levels of leadership in Battle Creek. And I really see that there's really good things happening right now. There's some seeds of real opportunity. And as a community, I want us to seize that and really keep moving with the momentum and moving forward.
What is an example of an opportunity you see?
Well, let's talk about some of the downtown. I've been really enjoying talking with folks as I've been walking around the neighborhoods around some of the good things that we have starting to be downtown. On one hand, that's an area where it's struggled for a long time. But have you been to the bookstore? Have you been to the new toy store? There's a couple new restaurants opening. And some of those I actually just visited for the first time a few weeks ago. And I've been telling everyone, have you gone down there? Well, not yet. Well, we all want that. I'm hearing that consistently. We all want a vibrant city, a vibrant downtown. There are seeds of good things happening. Let's keep moving those forward.
Are there areas where we are short that you can see and that you feel we need more momentum?
Absolutely. Well, I really take in very many things sort of a both and approach. On one hand, I think it's vital that as a community we focus on our strengths, and we do have strengths. We are a city rich in heritage and history, and we have really good educational and other institutional assets in our community. The and is we're struggling in a lot of ways, and we all know that. We're struggling. We have neighborhoods that are struggling, have been for a long time. Again, as I've been out listening to folks, I've heard that. There's distress. There's concerns and things. 10 years ago, I worked at Legal Services and was doing work in housing. We've seen some real changes in buildings getting knocked down, but we're still hearing the same thing about how are we going to revitalize, though? How are we going to, we've got to get some of those buildings out of the way, the blighted property. That's key. That's essence. We've got to do that. But how do we also move forward together as a community and create the type of community that we want to build up? Education, as a community, we know we've got to do better with our educational systems. There's some really great things going on. And I think as a community, what I hear consistently is, we want a community where all of our children can thrive. All of our families are getting the type of quality and equitable education that they deserve.
So is there something you as a commissioner could do to advance that?
Well, so there's one area in terms of education in particular that I'm interested in. So the city doesn't directly oversee education, but one thing that I am passionate about and have a strength in is around bringing our different sectors together. We've seen, again, when you asked about areas of momentum, we have some of BC Vision. You have some areas of momentum where different sectors are coming together in new ways. That's an incredibly important starting point. I want to keep pushing that forward. In terms of, again, what I was saying about education, we have some opportunities in our ward, which is sort of the north side and part of Post.
Right.
We have Miller College and KCC, the Career Center along that corridor of North Avenue and Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this big, beautiful building, the rehab center, that was, sadly vacated recently. I'd like to see some opportunities where, again, we have that cross-sector collaboration, looking at what can we do with that space and really build on our assets in that area, that corridor, and really think about that as a talent corridor. We're focused on education, workforce development. I didn't mention, of course, earlier, jobs. Of course, that's where everyone,
Sure.
we have, universal concern around high-quality, good-paying jobs also is a need in our community.
Is there something that a commission could do to try and influence that?
I think I think that we have to be involved. So some of my approach and my vision is, as a city government, there's certain things that we have to do that are absolutely critical. It's part of our central focus.
Right.
There's infrastructure. We have to have infrastructure. It has to be effective. It has to be efficient. Has to be high quality. We have a management responsibility and accountability, making sure that goals are getting set, things are getting done. There's communication with the public. But I also think, and where I'd like to be able to also bring some of my energy and ideas and relationships with lots of broad folks in the community, is we as a city, we need a vision, we need leadership that's looking big picture of what do we want for our community, what are we striving for, how are we making sure that every single person has opportunities and is valued, and feels welcome.
Is BC Vision doing that?
I think BC Vision is a really good starting point. So BC Vision is, I've been hearing lots of things, and there's lots of conflicting opinions around things with BC Vision. What I see, though, yes, there are challenges, but we're at a point of cultural change. We're trying to do things differently. We're trying to get a whole bunch of people in the room that haven't necessarily been there together. And that sort of sometimes brings conflict. And I actually think, as a community, one thing that I'd like to see in terms of how we change, how we work together, is how do we embrace conflict in a way that's going to move us forward, that's going to be transformative, that's going to be productive, rather than breaking us down. Because I actually think that's where the possibility lies for us. If we can move together, work together in different ways. And I'm actually the co-chair of the education work for BC Vision, and I'm doing that on a voluntary basis, been in that role since June, and I'm doing it again because ultimately education is, it's the future, it's our children, and there has not been a type of collaborative in that space in the last decade that I've worked in nonprofits, other than for a while the Educators Task Force, but it wasn't even quite the same. So I do see there's possibility, there's hope, and I see people thinking big, and we need that type of big vision for our community.
All right. Well, we appreciate the time you've given us today to introduce yourself to us and give us some notion for where you think our work is yet to be done, and so we appreciate that. Kate Flores will be on the ballot tomorrow for Battle Creek City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much.